In a bustling metropolis, where the stark contrast between wealth and poverty was evident on every corner, there existed the elite school, an institution known for educating the children of some of the city's most influential and affluent families. The school, surrounded by high walls and iron gates, exuded an air of exclusivity. Inside, well-decorated hallways and classrooms equipped with the latest educational technologies welcomed students who arrived in luxury cars dropped off by uniformed drivers. In the same city, far from the skyscrapers and well-kept streets, lived Joao, a 12-year-old boy facing the harsh reality of being homeless. With disheveled hair and worn-out clothes, Joao spent his days wandering the streets, surviving on odd jobs and the generosity of strangers. Joao's life was a constant struggle, marked by cold nights and uncertain days, but he carried with him a remarkable resilience and an insatiable curiosity. Joao had always been fascinated by stories. He owned a single book, an old volume of adventure tales, which he treasured as his greatest possession. This book was his escape, a portal to different worlds and a way to forget, even if just for a short time, the hardships of his life. One morning, while walking through the bustling streets of downtown, Joao found a colorful flyer discarded on the ground. Curious, he picked it up and began to read. The flyer was an advertisement for the elite school, highlighting its excellence in education and the numerous opportunities available to its students. Joao looked at the photos of smiling children in pristine uniforms, studying in modern classrooms and participating in various activities. The images and words evoked a sense of fascination and desire in Joao. He wondered what it would be like to attend a school like that, where knowledge seemed abundant and possibilities endless. Driven by curiosity and perhaps a spark of hope, Joao decided to visit the school. He knew that as a homeless boy, he might be turned away, but the desire to see it with his own eyes was stronger than the fear of rejection. Wearing his cleanest, albeit worn-out clothes, and holding his storybook tightly, Joao walked to the elite school. Upon arrival, he was confronted by an impressive sight. High gates and an imposing facade, surrounded by well-maintained gardens. He hesitated for a moment, feeling small in the face of such grandeur. Joao took a deep breath and, with his heart racing, approached the gates. Before he could enter, a security guard intercepted him. The guard was a tall, burly man with a stern expression. "What are you doing here, boy?" the guard asked, looking at Joao with a mixture of suspicion and distrust. Joao, undeterred, replied honestly, "I saw the flyer about the school and wanted to see what it's like inside. I've never been to a school like this before." The guard, accustomed to dealing with unexpected visitors, was about to send Joao away. But at that moment, the school principal, Mr. Carlos, passed by the gate. Mr. Carlos was a middle-aged man with a dignified posture and a keen eye. He noticed the scene and stopped, observing Joao with interest. "What's going on here?" Mr. Carlos asked, approaching. The guard quickly explained the situation, mentioning that the boy wanted to see the school. Mr. Carlos looked at Joao, assessing him carefully. He saw something in the boy's eyes, a mix of curiosity, hope, and perhaps a bit of desperation. Intrigued by Joao's courage to approach a place so different from his reality, Mr. Carlos decided to learn more. "You said you wanted to see the school, right?" Mr. Carlos asked, in a softer tone. Joao nodded, holding his book tighter. "Yes, sir. I just wanted to see what it's like. I've never been to a school before." Mr. Carlos remained silent for a moment, pondering. He knew that many students at elite school came from privileged backgrounds and that Joao's presence would be an anomaly. However, He also recognized an opportunity to teach an important lesson about empathy and understanding. "All right, Joao. I'll show you the school," Mr. Carlos said, surprising both the guard and Joao. "But know that this is an exception. Are you ready to see something different?" Joao, with his eyes shining with expectation, nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir," he replied, with a shy smile. Smiling, Mr. Carlos opened the gate and gestured for Joao to follow him. As they walked through the school's hallways, Joao couldn't contain his fascination. The walls were decorated with trophies, certificates of academic excellence, and pictures of school events. The classrooms, equipped with modern computers and interactive whiteboards, were unlike anything Joao had ever seen. As they passed a science classroom, Mr. Carlos stopped and allowed Joao to observe a class in progress. The students, dressed in their elegant uniforms, were conducting a scientific experiment under the guidance of an enthusiastic teacher. Joao was mesmerized, watching the students handle equipment he had never seen before. He listened attentively to the teacher's explanations, soaking up every word like a sponge. Some students noticed Joao and began whispering. One or two laughed, pointing at his simple clothes and old book. Joao, though aware of the stares, remained focused on the class, determined to make the most of his experience. Mr. Carlos noticed Joao's discomfort and decided to continue the tour, taking him to other parts of the school, like the library, where a vast collection of books awaited eager readers. Seeing the shelves full of books, Joao felt a mixture of joy and sadness. He thought about how wonderful it would be to read all those books, but knew that in his current situation, it seemed impossible. Mr. Carlos, noticing Joao's reaction, asked, "Do you like to read, Joao?" Joao smiled, with a sparkle in his eyes. "Yes, sir. I have a book that I read all the time. I love stories. They help me forget the bad things." Mr. Carlos was impressed with Joao's passion for reading and decided he needed to do something to help the boy. He knew that education could be a way out for Joao, and that perhaps his presence at elite school could teach the students a valuable lesson about life beyond the school's walls. With this idea in mind, Mr. Carlos took Joao back to his office, where he offered the boy a snack and began to think about how he could integrate Joao into the school, even temporarily. He knew that Joao's presence might cause some adverse reactions, but he also believed it would be a learning opportunity for everyone involved. Led by Mr. Carlos, Joao continued his unexpected journey through the corridors of elite school. Each step he took within that environment was like entering a new world, full of discoveries and surprises. The school's walls were adorned with portraits of notable alumni and awards from academic, artistic, and athletic competitions. Joao observed everything with wide eyes, absorbing every detail as if he were in a museum of wonders. As they passed by a science classroom, Joao stopped to observe through the window. Inside, the students were conducting an experiment with microscopes, examining plant samples, and discussing their observations with the teacher. Joao, who had never seen a microscope before, was fascinated by the precision and enthusiasm with which the students worked. He pressed his face against the glass, trying to catch every word the teacher was saying. The students inside the classroom noticed Joao's presence. Some curious glances turned toward him, while others whispered and laughed. Joao felt a slight discomfort at being the center of attention, but his curiosity overcame his shyness. He wanted to learn, to understand what was happening in that class. Mr. Carlos, noticing the situation, invited Joao into the classroom. The teacher, seeing the principal, paused the class for a moment. Mr. Carlos introduced Joao to the class, briefly explaining that he was visiting the school to learn more about the academic environment. The students, still surprised, continued to observe him as Joao approached one of the experiment benches. "What are you doing?" Joao asked, his voice full of curiosity. The teacher, smiling at Joao's sincerity, explained that they were studying plant cells and using microscopes to see structures that are not visible to the naked eye. He invited Joao to look through the microscope, an offer the boy eagerly accepted. Joao looked into the device and was amazed to see the magnified cells. It was like a new universe unfolding before his eyes. "Wow, that's incredible," Joao exclaimed, looking at the teacher and the students around him. "I've never seen anything like this before." The teacher, touched by Joao's reaction, explained more about the cells and how they form the basis of all life. Joao listened attentively, absorbing the knowledge like a sponge. For him, every word was a piece of a world he had always wanted to explore, but had never had the opportunity to. The students, seeing Joao's genuine interest, began to change their attitude. Some approached, curious to learn more about him. They asked where he came from and what his life was like outside the school. Joao, initially hesitant, began to share a bit about his life on the streets, his daily struggles, and his passion for reading the only book he owned. His sincerity and humility touched some of the students, who began to see him in a different light. After the science class, Mr. Carlos continued the tour, taking Joao to other areas of the school. They passed by the gym, where a group of students was playing basketball. Joao stopped to watch, fascinated by the energy and skill of the players. He had always enjoyed sports, but had never had the opportunity to play in an organized setting. Mr. Carlos noticed Joao's interest and promised that if he wanted, he could participate in the school's sports activities. Next, they went to the library, a place that immediately captured Joao's attention. The shelves were tall and filled with books of all genres and topics. For Joao, who valued his only storybook as a treasure, the library seemed like paradise. He walked slowly through the aisles, running his fingers along the spines of the books, wishing he could read them all. The librarian, seeing Joao's interest, approached and asked if he would like to borrow a book. Joao, surprised and emotional, nodded vigorously. He chose a book of adventure stories, something that had always fascinated him. The librarian, smiling, registered the loan and handed the book to Joao. "Here, you can read whenever you want. Just return it when you're done or trade it for another one," the librarian said with an encouraging smile. Joao held the book carefully, as if it were something fragile and precious. He thanked the librarian and Mr. Carlos, feeling a mix of gratitude and disbelief for living that moment. As they walked back to Mr. Carlos's office, Joao couldn't stop thinking about everything he had seen and learned. He knew that this world was very different from his own, but for the first time, he felt that he might belong there. Mr. Carlos observed Joao's enthusiasm and felt growing admiration for the boy. He knew that despite the difficult circumstances, Joao had a thirst for knowledge and determination that were rare. When they arrived at the office, Mr. Carlos sat at his desk and looked at Joao with a thoughtful smile. "Joao, I was very impressed with your interest and curiosity today. You showed a desire to learn that is truly inspiring," he said sincerely. "I would like to talk to you about an idea I had." Joao, still holding the borrowed book, looked at Mr. Carlos expectantly. "What idea, sir?" he asked, eagerly. Mr. Carlos took a deep breath, knowing that what he was about to propose could change Joao's life. "I would like to offer you a scholarship here at Elite School. This means you could study here and have access to all the classes and activities, just like any other student," the principal explained. "But there is a condition. I would like you to share your story and experiences with your classmates. I believe your perspective can teach them a lot about life beyond these walls." João was silent for a moment, absorbing the magnitude of the offer. The idea of studying at such a prestigious school was something he had never considered possible. And at the same time, the prospect of sharing his story in front of so many strangers was daunting. But João knew this was a unique opportunity, a chance to change his life and perhaps touch the hearts of others. "I accept," João finally said, with a firm voice. "I'll tell my story." Mr. Carlos smiled, satisfied with João's decision. "I'm glad to hear that, João. We'll organize everything for next week. Until then, you can attend classes and get familiar with the school. I'm sure you'll do very well." João left the office with his heart racing and his mind full of thoughts. He knew that the next days would be challenging, but he also knew it was a golden opportunity. Holding the book he had borrowed, he walked through the school's hallways, feeling different. For the first time in a long time, João felt that he belonged somewhere, and that gave him new hope. After the eye-opening tour of elite school, João returned to Mr. Carlos's office, still trying to process everything he had seen and experienced. The offer of a scholarship seemed like a distant, unreal dream. Sitting in front of the principal, João couldn't hide his anxiety and excitement. Mr. Carlos, sensing the whirlwind of emotions in the boy, decided to approach the matter with care and clarity. "João, I know all of this might seem a bit overwhelming," Mr. Carlos began gently. "Elite school is a very different place from your reality, and I understand that this offer might be a shock to you. But I want you to know that I see incredible potential in you. You have a passion for learning that is rare and precious." João, still holding the book he had borrowed from the library, looked at Mr. Carlos with a mix of hope and uncertainty. "Sir, I never imagined something like this for me. I just wanted to see the school, but now you're offering me something so big." João hesitated, trying to find the right words. "Why me? Why give me this chance?" Mr. Carlos smiled, seeing the sincerity and humility in João. "João, you impressed me today. Not only with your curiosity, but with your courage to enter a place where you could easily feel uncomfortable. You demonstrated an inner strength that many students here have never had to develop," the principal explained. "I believe you can bring something valuable to this school, not just to learn, but also to teach others about resilience, empathy, and the importance of appreciating what we have." The principal paused, looking directly into João's eyes. "That's why I'm offering you this scholarship. I want you to have the opportunity to learn and grow, but I also want you to share your story. Many students here have never imagined the kind of challenges you face daily. Your experience can be a powerful lesson for all of us," Mr. Carlos concluded, with a serious and encouraging expression. João felt the weight of Mr. Carlos's words. He knew that his life on the streets was different from the reality of the elite school students, but he had never thought of his experience as something that could teach others. The idea of sharing his story was both exciting and terrifying. He feared being judged or ridiculed, but he also knew this was an opportunity to show who he really was and maybe change people's perceptions of him and others in the same situation. "I understand, sir. I want this opportunity. I want to learn, and maybe, who knows, help others understand a little more about what it's like to live as I do," João said, with determination in his voice. "I accept the scholarship and I accept to tell my story." Mr. Carlos smiled, clearly pleased with João's response. "I'm very happy with your decision, João. We will organize a presentation for next week, where you will have the chance to speak to all the students and teachers. Until then, you can attend classes and prepare for the day. We will help you with everything you need," said Mr. Carlos, extending his hand to João. João shook the principal's hand, feeling a mix of fear and excitement. He knew the next week would be a challenge, but also a chance to change his life. As he left the office, he felt the weight of responsibility, but also a new hope growing inside him. In the days that followed, João began attending classes at elite school. Wearing the school uniform that had been given to him, he stood out among the other students, not only for his appearance but also for his curious and enthusiastic attitude. He attended classes with a fervor that surprised teachers and students alike. João asked insightful questions, absorbed the content eagerly, and demonstrated a genuine desire to learn. However, the adaptation was not easy. Some students, still clinging to prejudices and stereotypes, avoided João or made hurtful comments about his background. João heard whispers about his street past and saw disdainful looks, but he tried not to let it affect him. He focused on his classes and the new knowledge he was gaining. One of the teachers who had the most impact on João was Mr. Almeida, the literature teacher. Mr. Almeida was a middle-aged man with a burning passion for books and stories. He was impressed with João's knowledge of literature, despite the boy's limitations. When João mentioned that he loved to read and owned only one book of adventure stories, Mr. Almeida decided to encourage that passion. "João, you have a natural talent for words. I would like to see you write your own stories. Use your experiences, your dreams, everything you want to express," Mr. Almeida said, handing João a new notebook and some pencils. Writing is a powerful way to communicate our thoughts and feelings. I want to see what you can create. João accepted the challenge with enthusiasm. At night, in the street corner he called home, he dedicated himself to writing. In the silence of the night, he let his words flow, creating stories of adventure, mystery, and hope. For João, writing was a way to explore his feelings, process his experiences, and dream of a better future. During the day, João continued to prepare for the presentation. Mr. Carlos and Mr. Almeida helped him structure what he would say, focusing not only on the difficulties of living on the streets, but also on the life lessons he had learned. Maria, a student who had become friends with João, also helped him, encouraging him to be honest and brave. Maria was a shy student who also felt out of place at the school, though for different reasons. She came from a wealthy family but always felt pressured by her parents' expectations. Upon meeting João, she identified with the feeling of being different and out of place. Maria and João quickly became friends, and she became a fervent advocate for him among the students. As the week passed, the news about João's presentation spread throughout the school. Students and teachers were curious, and some skeptical, about what João had to say. Some still wondered if a street boy could really bring something of value to such a privileged environment. Others, touched by João's courage, hoped to learn something new. João, feeling the growing pressure, prepared meticulously. He knew this presentation was more than just telling his story. It was a chance to show everyone who he was, challenge prejudices, and perhaps inspire others to see the world differently. As the day of the presentation approached, João felt a mix of anxiety and excitement. He reviewed his notes and practiced his speech, always with Maria and Mr. Carlos offering support and advice. He knew he was about to face one of the biggest challenges of his life, but he also knew he was ready for it. As the day of João's presentation approached, the atmosphere at elite school was charged with anticipation and curiosity. The news that a student, until then unknown and from such a different reality, would share his story had spread like wildfire throughout the school. Teachers and students were eager to hear what João had to say, while some still maintained a skeptical or even indifferent stance. João, on the other hand, felt the weight of this expectation. He knew he wasn't just telling his personal story. He was representing many other children in similar situations. With the help of Mr. Carlos, João spent hours preparing his speech. They met after classes in the principal's office, where they worked out the details of what would be said and how it would be presented. João, remember that this is a golden opportunity for you to express your thoughts and touch people's hearts. Be honest and speak from the heart, Mr. Carlos said during one of these meetings. Your experience is unique and can open many eyes to realities they don't know about. João nodded, understanding the importance of the moment. He wanted his story to be not just about the hardships he faced, but also about hope and resilience. He wanted to show that, regardless of circumstances, everyone has the potential to grow and achieve their dreams. An important part of the preparation was practicing public speaking. João, though naturally articulate, had never spoken before a large audience before. Maria, always by his side, helped him rehearse. They used an empty classroom or the auditorium to simulate the presentation, with Maria asking questions and offering feedback. Remember, João, speak slowly and clearly. Don't worry if you get nervous. It's normal. The important thing is to be sincere and speak from the heart, Maria advised as they rehearsed. João was grateful for Maria's help. Her friendship had been a pillar of support during these days of preparation. Maria, who also felt out of place at school, found in João a connection she hadn't felt with other classmates. She admired his courage and determination and wanted to do everything she could to help him succeed. Meanwhile, Mr. Almeida, the literature teacher, also got involved in the preparation. He encouraged João to include excerpts from his own stories and poems in the speech as a way to showcase his talent and creativity. João accepted the suggestion, choosing some of the texts he had recently written. He wanted the audience to see not just the boy who survived on the streets, but also the dreamer and writer he was. João, your words have the power to touch people. Don't be afraid to show who you are through your writing, Mr. Almeida said, handing João a notebook with the selected texts. Besides words, João also wanted the presentation to be a visual experience. With the help of the school's technology department, he prepared a small slideshow with photos depicting street life and the reality of many homeless children. He wanted the images to complement his words, creating a deeper impact on the audience. The entire school was mobilized for the event. The auditorium was prepared to accommodate all the students and teachers, with additional chairs being brought in. There was a palpable sense of expectation, and many wondered how João would react to such a large audience. However, challenges were not lacking. Despite the support he received, João still faced resistance from some students. One day, during a preparation session, he overheard a group discussing his presentation in the hallway. "He's just a street kid. What can he teach us?" One student said dismissively. "Yeah, I bet he's just here to take advantage," another added. João, hearing these words, felt a pang of sadness but decided to use these comments as motivation. He knew that many students had never experienced the difficulties he faced, and that some might be insensitive or ignorant. But he also knew this was an opportunity to change those perceptions and perhaps open some hearts and minds. On the eve of the presentation, João was more nervous than ever. He reviewed his notes repeatedly, trying to prepare for any eventuality. Maria and Mr. Carlos were there to support him, offering words of encouragement and reassurance. "João, you're going to do great. Remember, this is your story, and no one can tell it better than you," Maria said with a reassuring smile. Mr. Carlos agreed, adding, "And remember, João, we're all here to support you. No matter what happens, you've already won by being here and sharing your story." João took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his friend's words. He knew he was about to face one of the biggest challenges of his life, but he also knew he was ready. He was determined to do his best, and regardless of the reaction, he knew he had taken an important step in changing his life. That night, João could hardly sleep, the anxiety and anticipation mixing in his chest. He thought about everything he wanted to say, how he wanted his classmates to see the world through his eyes, even if just for a moment. He knew that the next day, he would have a platform to share his truth and, hopefully, inspire others to see beyond appearances. As the sun rose, João got up, dressed carefully, and looked in the mirror, remembering everything he had gone through to get to this point. With the support of his friends and teachers, he felt ready to face whatever came. It was time to tell his story. The day of the presentation finally arrived. The elite school's auditorium was packed with all the students and teachers present. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of curiosity and tension. For many, this would be an unusual event, a break in the daily school routine, while for João, it was a decisive moment, an opportunity to share his story and perhaps change some perceptions. João, dressed in the school uniform and holding the notebook with his notes, waited backstage. He could hear the murmur of voices in the auditorium and felt his heart beating faster. Maria was by his side, offering words of encouragement and support. "You're going to be amazing, João. Just remember to speak from the heart and everything will be fine," she said, holding his hand with an encouraging smile. Mr. Carlos appeared next, bringing one last message of support. "João, I'm proud of you for coming this far. You've already done something incredible just by being willing to share your story. Remember that everyone here has something to learn from you," he said with a sincere smile. With a nod, Mr. Carlos went to the stage to introduce João. He spoke briefly about the importance of empathy and listening to stories that are not often heard. Today, we have the opportunity to learn from someone who brings a unique perspective. João is a new student here, but he has already shown great courage and resilience. "Please give him a warm welcome as he shares his story with us," Mr. Carlos said, leaving the stage. João took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. He knew he was about to face a crowd that mostly did not understand his reality. But he also knew this was a chance to open hearts and minds. With steady steps, he walked to the stage as a hesitant and curious applause rose from the audience. Standing at the microphone, João looked out at the crowd. The stage lights were intense, and for a moment, he felt a wave of nervousness. However, he quickly found the encouraging gaze of Maria and Mr. Almeida, who were sitting in the front row. That gave him the courage to begin. "Hello, my name is João," he began, in a calm and clear voice, "and I would like to share my story with you." João started by talking about his life on the streets, describing with honesty and sensitivity the challenges he faced daily. He spoke about what it was like to wake up not knowing if he would have something to eat, about the dangers he faced, and the constant struggle for survival. He described how, despite everything, he always found solace in reading and learning, using his book of stories as an escape and a way to keep his hope alive. "For me, reading was always a refuge. Each story was a chance to escape, to live adventures and learn something new," João said, holding the book he had brought with him. "This book taught me that even when everything seems difficult, there is always something worth fighting for." As João spoke, the auditorium was in absolute silence. Some students were visibly moved, while others seemed perplexed. For many, it was the first time they had heard in detail about the difficulties faced by someone living on the streets. João's reality contrasted sharply with their own lives, full of comforts and security. Joao then talked about the value of education and how much it meant to him to be at elite school. He described how he always dreamed of learning and how this opportunity was a chance to change his life. He thanked Mr. Carlos and the teachers who supported him, highlighting how much he had learned in such a short time. Being here is a dream I never thought would be possible. Each day is a new opportunity to learn and grow. And I'm very grateful to everyone who helped me get here, Joao said sincerely. He also addressed the prejudices he faced, both at school and outside it. He spoke about how some people judged him by his appearance or the situation he was in, without knowing his story or aspirations. Joao used this as an opportunity to talk about empathy and the importance of seeing beyond appearances. We all have our struggles, our challenges, but it's important to remember that every person has a story, something we can learn from. And that's what I want to share with you today, he continued. To illustrate his points, Joao used the slideshow he had prepared. The images showed children and families in street situations, depicting the harsh reality many face daily. The images, combined with his words, created a visual impact that helped the audience better understand what he was saying. Joao also shared some of the text he had written. He read a poem about hope and resilience, which he had composed on nights when he felt most lost and alone. The poem reflected his deepest feelings and his determination not to give up, despite the difficulties. I wrote this on a cold night when I felt completely alone. But even then, I found strength in words, in the hope of a better future, he said, with palpable emotion in his voice. When he finished reading, there was a moment of silence in the auditorium. Joao looked at the audience, realizing that he had touched many people. He concluded his presentation by thanking everyone for the opportunity to share his story and expressing his desire to continue learning and growing. I hope that by hearing my story, you can see the world a little differently, that you can appreciate the opportunities you have and maybe, somehow, help those who don't have the same chances. Thank you for listening, Joao concluded, with a shy smile. The auditorium erupted in applause, many rising to a standing ovation. Joao was surprised and moved by the warm response. He had prepared for a mixed reception, perhaps even some criticism, but the response was overwhelmingly positive. He looked at Maria and Mr. Almeida, who were clapping enthusiastically, and felt a wave of gratitude. After the presentation, several students and teachers approached Joao to congratulate him and thank him for sharing his story. Some students, who had previously avoided him, now wanted to get to know him better and understand more about his life. Joao felt that something had changed, that an invisible barrier had been broken. Maria, with tears in her eyes, hugged Joao. "You were amazing, Joao. I'm so proud of you," she said, with an emotional voice. Mr. Carlos also approached, with a satisfied smile. "Joao, you did something extraordinary today. You touched many people and showed everyone the power of empathy and understanding. Congratulations, my boy," he said, shaking Joao's hand firmly. The impact of Joao's presentation was profound and lasting. It not only opened many eyes to the difficulties faced by those in vulnerable situations, but also inspired a new wave of empathy and action within the school. Volunteer projects and fundraising efforts were initiated by students who wanted to make a difference in the community. Joao, who began his journey at elite school as a stranger, now felt accepted and valued. He knew there were still challenges ahead, but he was more determined than ever to continue his education and use his voice to make a difference. After the impactful presentation, the elite school auditorium remained in a state of reflection and emotion. The intensity of Joao's words and the moving images he shared left a lasting impression on everyone present. As the audience dispersed, many students and teachers approached João to express their admiration and gratitude. One of the first to approach was Mr. Almeida, the literature teacher, who had a look of deep respect and pride. "João, your words were powerful and touching. You managed to convey not only the harsh reality of street life, but also the hope and resilience you carry with you. I am truly inspired," Mr. Almeida said, shaking João's hand firmly. João, still processing the wave of emotions, thanked the teacher. He felt a mix of relief and satisfaction for having been able to share his story so meaningfully. Maria, always by his side, was visibly moved, with tears in her eyes. "I knew you would do an amazing job, João. You opened everyone's eyes to something many of us have never had to face. You are an inspiration," she said, hugging him tightly. As João received congratulations, some students who had previously avoided or treated him with indifference now wanted to get to know him better. They approached, hesitant but sincere in their words of support. João noticed faces that were once hostile now expressing curiosity and respect. Among them was Lucas, the boy who had made sarcastic comments the previous day. "Hey, João. I wanted to apologize for how I treated you before. I didn't know. I really didn't know what you were going through. Your presentation was incredible. I learned a lot today," Lucas said, with a genuine tone of regret. João looked at Lucas and, for a moment, felt a wave of conflicting emotions. But he knew that the goal of his presentation was precisely to promote understanding and empathy. He smiled at Lucas and replied, "Thank you, Lucas. I understand. Sometimes, we just need a chance to learn and grow. I'm glad my story touched you." This interaction symbolized a moment of reconciliation and growth. Other students also expressed their desire to get involved in projects that could help vulnerable children. The impact of João's presentation began to spread, inspiring concrete actions. Mr. Carlos, observing the interactions, felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He knew that allowing João to share his story had not only helped the boy feel more integrated into the school, but also awakened something new in the school community. Mr. Carlos took the initiative to discuss with the teachers and administrators how the school could continue to promote empathy and community service. One idea that emerged was the creation of a volunteer program where students could participate in activities to support homeless children and their families. João was invited to be part of the planning team, contributing his ideas and experiences. He accepted enthusiastically, seeing this as an opportunity to give back and help others. Over the following weeks, João noticed a gradual change in the way he was treated. The looks of judgment and indifference were replaced by smiles and friendly gestures. He made new friends and felt more comfortable participating in school activities. The library, which had always been his refuge, now became a place where he often gathered with other students to study and discuss books. The impact of the presentation also reflected in changes to the school curriculum. Mr. Almeida, inspired by João's example, began to include more readings and discussions on social issues, encouraging students to reflect on their own lives and those of others. He also organized a series of lectures and workshops on empathy and community service, with João being one of the speakers. Maria, motivated by João's experience and the positive effect he had on the school, began to engage more actively in community service activities. She and João worked together to organize a fundraising campaign aimed at supporting a local organization that helped homeless children. The campaign was a success, raising a significant amount and involving the entire school. João also continued to dedicate himself to writing, now with more confidence and purpose. Mr. Almeida encouraged João to share his stories in school publications, and even consider the possibility of writing a book. João, though modest, began to dream of the idea of publishing his stories and using his voice to inspire others. However, not everything was easy. João still faced challenges, especially when confronted with the realities of his life outside of school. He knew that his situation as a homeless boy could not be resolved immediately, but he felt encouraged by the new support network he had found. Mr. Carlos and the teachers were working to find a long-term solution, including the possibility of João moving to a shelter or foster home, where he could have a more stable environment. The ongoing support from friends, teachers, and the school community gave João a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. He felt that he was building a new life, one that was full of possibilities and hope. The acceptance he found at elite school not only changed his perspective of himself, but also influenced the way he viewed the future. Mr. Carlos, seeing João's growth, knew that the impact of his presentation would continue to resonate within the school. He planned to turn the experience into an annual program where students with unique stories could share their journeys and inspire others. He believed that this would not only enrich the educational experience, but also help cultivate a more empathetic and inclusive community. João, in turn, was more determined than ever to use his voice to promote understanding and change. He knew that his journey was just beginning and that, despite the challenges, he had the capacity to make a difference. With the continued support of Maria, Mr. Carlos, Mr. Almeida, and the entire school community, João felt that he could achieve his dreams and help others do the same. As the months passed, João's transformation at elite school continued to unfold in an inspiring way. The impact of his presentation resonated not only within the school community but also beyond the school's walls. João's story became an example of overcoming adversity and empathy, and his journey began to be shared in various circles, from parent meetings to community events. The volunteer program, inspired by João's presentation, quickly took shape. Students and teachers joined forces to create initiatives that addressed social issues, especially those related to the situation of homeless children. João, being a central figure in these projects, used his experience to guide others on how they could make a difference. He helped organize clothing and food donation campaigns, visits to shelters, and lectures on empathy and solidarity. Elite School also engaged in partnerships with local organizations to provide ongoing support to vulnerable children. João actively participated in these collaborations, becoming a bridge between the school and the external community. His ability to connect different worlds made him a respected and admired figure both within and outside the school. One of the most notable moments was the creation of a creative writing club, led by Mr. Almeida, where João played a key role. The club brought together students interested in literature and writing, offering a space to share their creations and discuss relevant topics. João, with his life experience and talent for words, became an inspiration to his peers. He encouraged others to explore their own stories and use writing as a form of expression and healing. João's writing also began to gain recognition outside the school. With Mr. Almeida's support, he submitted some of his texts to literary contests and youth magazines. His poetry and prose, full of emotion and reflection, touched many readers. João won several contests, which not only boosted his confidence but also gave him a new perspective on the future. He began to consider the possibility of pursuing a career as a writer, something that had once seemed like a distant dream. Meanwhile, Mr. Carlos and the other school administrators continued to seek ways to support João in his personal life. João's housing situation was addressed with seriousness, and after much discussion and planning, a temporary home was found for him. A family in the community, moved by João's story, offered to take him in while a more permanent solution was found. João, who had always valued his independence, accepted the offer with gratitude, recognizing that having a stable environment was crucial for his development. João's new housing provided him with the stability he needed. He had a safe place to study, rest, and continue writing. The family that took him in treated him with kindness and respect, creating an environment where João could flourish. They encouraged him in his school and creative activities, and João quickly became part of the family. Adapting to this new reality brought its own challenges. João was used to a life of uncertainty and constant struggle, and transitioning to a safer, more structured environment required adjustments. He needed to learn to trust again, accept help, and let go of some of the defenses he had built over the years. With the support of his new guardians, friends, and teachers, João began to find a balance between his independence and the need for support. Maria continued to be a constant presence in João's life. They studied together regularly, and Maria, inspired by João's story, decided to dedicate herself to community service. She began to consider careers involving helping others, such as psychology or social work. João and Maria became an example of true friendship and mutual support, inspiring other students to be more understanding and supportive. As João's life stabilized, he also began to reflect on the future. He knew there were still many challenges ahead, especially regarding his education and career. However, he was more confident than ever. The experience at elite school and the support he received gave him a new perspective on his abilities and the world around him. He knew that, with determination and support, he could achieve great things. João's story also began to inspire systemic changes at elite school. Mr. Carlos, recognizing the importance of creating an inclusive and diverse environment, worked with the administration to develop programs that promoted inclusion and empathy. This included implementing curricula that addressed issues of social and economic inequality, as well as creating scholarships for students from different socioeconomic backgrounds. João, now an influential voice at the school, actively participated in these discussions, offering his unique perspective. He also became a mentor to other students facing difficulties, using his experience to guide and inspire them. His journey of overcoming became an example of resilience and courage, and many at the school looked up to him as a source of inspiration. At a special end-of-year event, the school honored João for his contributions and achievements. Mr. Carlos gave an emotional speech, highlighting João's journey and the positive impact he had on the school community. João, you have not only overcome challenges that many of us could never imagine, but you have also brought a new light to our school. Your courage, resilience, and dedication to learning remind us of the true purpose of education: to empower and inspire, said Mr. Carlos, as the auditorium filled with applause. João, emotional, stepped onto the stage to receive the award. He thanked everyone for their support and reflected on his journey. He spoke about the importance of not giving up and believing in one's potential, regardless of circumstances. His final message was one of hope and action. We all have the power to make a difference, no matter where we come from. Believe in your dreams, support each other, and never underestimate the power of empathy and kindness. I am proof that with support and determination, anything is possible, João concluded, with a confident smile. The event was a moment of celebration and reflection for everyone. João's story, from his struggles on the streets to his success at elite school, became a symbol of hope and transformation. He had not only changed his own life, but also touched the lives of many around him. As the school year came to an end, João looked to the future with optimism and determination. He knew there was still much to be done, both in his personal journey and in the community. However, he was ready to face any challenges that came his way, with the assurance that he would never be alone. With the continued support of his friends, teachers, and his new family, João was ready to build a bright future full of possibilities.